Perfect. Looks like everyone's joining in. Recording's been kicked off. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just going to give it a minute or two just to wait for everyone else to join. If you haven't got a coffee yet, I would run very quickly to grab one, just in prep for this session. But yeah, we'll give it we'll give it about a minute, and then we'll kick this off. Good morning to those that have just joined. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Just going to give it a minute, or maybe just under a minute, just for the last couple of people to join into the session, and then we will kick off. It also allows me to gulp down half of my coffee, which I've got here, and guessing towards the end of this session, the coffee would have probably gone cold. So taking advantage of this quick 30 seconds. But anyway, I think we've probably got enough people in. Anyone else that's joining, they can, of course, catch up a little bit more. So, as mentioned, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the security series. This is day 3, session 1. And here today, we're going to be talking around Microsoft Azure Sentinel. So, if I can go next on the slides, that would be great. So, by way of some housekeeping for this session, you are muted. Please keep yourself on mute. But if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box. We do have a bit of time towards the end for Q&A, depending on how we get on in this session, and how much time we have left would be how many questions we can, of course, ask. Any unanswered questions, though, we'll definitely take them offline and, reach out to everyone that has joined here, with the Q&A. Alternatively, if there's a question that you don't want to ask within the chat box, please email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. There's a lot of people here at Bytes that can support and answer those questions. So, feel free to throw them across. This session is being recorded. It will be made available to you later today, or at least that's what my slide says. It might be tomorrow, but yeah, you can catch up at your leisure. And towards the end, there will be a survey and a poll question where you can request a callback from one of our specialists. Please do take advantage of this. As mentioned, if you do have any questions, then do reach out in the chat box or to tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. So, a little bit of introduction about myself before we go into the agenda. My name is genoamiyatra. I'm the head of technology solutions development here at Bytes. I suppose that's a fancy way of saying that I wear many hats. One of those hats being cybersecurity pre-sales. The other hat being, or hats would be, working with our professional services, managed services, and cyber consulting team to define out, those solutions that we take to our customers. I suppose the last hat that I suppose we all wear is doing whatever our boss tells us to do. So my boss, which is the CTO, normally comes up with some really good ideas, and I'm the one that tends to put them into practice. But hopefully that's enough about me. Do not want to go into my life story today because we only have an hour. And in terms of that hour, and by way of agenda, just on introduction, so we can definitely tick that one off. But first things first, want to do a little bit of a security market update. What are we seeing in the market? But also, Bytes has, and I think some of you might have seen this. Bytes has recently sent out a survey, to a number of our customers. We've got a lot of responses back from that survey, and it's actually shown us, some insightful information, especially when it comes to things like Sentinel, Semen, SOC. So going to do a little bit of an update about that, but then we're going to jump into Azure Sentinel. So what is Azure Sentinel? Why would someone consider Azure Sentinel? and all of that good stuff. We'll then touch briefly on managed services. I think managed services are definitely important, especially when we take the information from the security market update into consideration. And then finally, we'll close down with Byte's capabilities within the Sentinel, SIEM, and SOC space. Finally, any questions we can then start fielding out on the Q&A session. So hopefully everyone's in the right place. Hopefully that agenda ticks a lot of boxes with everyone. So let's jump straight into it. So in terms of the I think someone's talking. If you have just joined, please make sure that you keep yourself on mute, please. So in terms of the security market update, as mentioned, Bytes recently sent out a survey to a number of customers, and it actually revealed, some interesting points, and some that we, already know and would have guessed, and some maybe a little bit more interesting. And I suppose first and foremost, the one nice thing that I definitely like to see was 95% of our responders or of the responders have MFA in place. This is great. If we take this, say, 2 years ago, we know that there was a lot of businesses that were either in the middle of implementing MFA or considering implementing MFA. MFA is now no longer a nice to have, it is more of a standard, right? If a cloud app doesn't have MFA, why would we consider it? In terms of protecting ourselves, our users and their identity, we of course need MFA in place. So, some very great results around that. And 80% of our responders actually have high confidence in their email and web security solutions, which is, again, very good to see. There are a number of very good email security solutions out there, as with web security solutions. So in terms of putting the proactive controls in place, this is a good statistic to see. But in terms of the reactive side, in terms of the security operations side, we actually saw that only 17% of responders have a SIEM tool, or only have a SIEM tool in place. So they've got a SIEM tool, but they don't necessarily have a SOC team or a managed service, or someone monitoring that SIEM solution, which is quite a low number on the SIEM side. But what's more interesting is almost a third of the responders actually have a managed SOC service. So that's, again, very good to see in terms of the response capability that businesses have. And I suppose, tying that into, what we tend to see in terms of the control model and our objective around this is, typically within security, we all focus in this green area. We all focus on the proactive controls, right? This is your web filtration solution, your endpoint, your email filtration. We are proactively trying to deter these kind of threats. However, it's now not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we're going to experience a breach. So because of that, we actually need to step a couple of layers deeper into the yellow, and I'd say that's a pinkish red area of the control model. And within these areas, this is all about gathering intelligence to actually identify, detect, and isolate any threats that become within our environment. So we are actively reacting to a threat that could be within our environment. And of course, for a number of you, and I know a number of you are here for Sentinel and SIEM, you can of course, quite quickly and easily see that, the orange and pinkish red areas spell out, SIEM solution. Because, in reality, when we look at SIEM tools or security information and event management, if there's any of you that are unfamiliar with SIEM technologies, SIEM technologies pull loads of different data sources together from loads of different security solutions. So we're taking everything from the web security solution to our AD and DNS servers to our email security solutions, even everything from Azure, M365, AWS, we're pulling this all together into one place. And the reason why we do this is because we want to correlate that information and understand trends, patterns, and potential security incidents that might touch multiple platforms. So for example, if a email comes into a user, it then lands on the endpoint, the user then clicks on a link, we know that there's going to be logs on the email based on that email that's come through. There's going to be logs on the endpoint, there's going to be logs on the website. Now, typically, depending on how you structure all your vendors, typically these are 3 different solutions. This could be 3 different vendors. You could have Mimecast for email, Defender for endpoints on the endpoint, and you could have, I don't know, Zscaler as the web proxy. These 3 solutions might not speak with each other, right? So how do we know how that threat has moved across our estate? We simply wouldn't. A SIEM tool, however, it's going to connect into all of these. It's going to pull it all together. So we can see it from, and I know I'm probably going to regret saying this expression, a single pane of glass, right? And this gives our security analysts a window into what's happening within our environment. Now, the most interesting thing that I've come across in a number of different customer conversations, especially when SIEM is involved, is SIEM versus SOC. These are almost used interchangeably now. I don't know if it's because it's been pasted everywhere on LinkedIn, or all the marketing blurb has kind of jumbled this up, but there is a massive difference in my mind between SIEM and SOC, right? A SIEM is a solution, the security information and event management. This is pulling all of those logs, correlating it into one place, applying a level of analytics to actually surface alerts for an analyst to actually start investigating. So, of course, what a SIEM doesn't have is people, right? It is just a solution. So we need an analyst, a person, or a team of analysts generally to actually use this SIEM tool to start investigating. Now, if we just give analysts access to a SIEM tool, they're probably going to do a good job because they love hunting for threats and finding things wrong. But what we really need is some kind of structure behind that. And of course, that's where we start putting processes in place, right? We want to make sure that our analysts are hunting threats in the correct way. We don't want them cowboying off and doing loads of weird and wonderful stuff, which might be good, but it could also be, equally as bad. So, a SIEM tool, it needs people, normally quite a number of people if you want to do a 24/7, and you need processes. And this equals a SOC, right? This gives us a security operations center, a SOC team, which effectively is a combination of all of these. So a SOC team will use a SOC team will use a SIEM tool. That is their underpinning solution that's going to connect into all of these data sources, and they're going to have processes in place to respond to incidents. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone so far. So why am I actually going through the SOC capability side? Well, when we look at SOC capability, this is all around providing the desired incident capability, response capability, right? When we see a threat come through or some kind of suspicious activity come through, we want to be in a place to be able to react and respond to this. Simply deploying a SIEM tool and connecting it to everything is not going to give us this, right? The technology is but a small part of it. It's a big part, and equally a small part, without the people and the processes and actually building the capability around all 3 of those areas, you're not going to get that desired response capability. So when a threat, an issue, a malicious activity, an incident comes in, until we respond to this in the correct way, until we manage to investigate and contain things in the correct way, we're never going to see that desired capability. So technology is but one part. We're really looking to actually get that SOC capability. So you're probably wondering, well, why am I going on about SIEM and SOC? And there is actually, a good point to this, which I will hopefully eventually get to, especially when we look at Azure Sentinel. Now, a lot of you will know that Azure Sentinel is Microsoft's cloud-native SIEM solution. It's hosted in Azure, and because it's hosted in Azure, it comes with all the typical cloud bells and whistles, like, you get the scalability, you get the flexibility, it's built on a cloud platform that has, very good redundancy, SLAs built in from the start. It's going to tick a lot of boxes, right? It's Microsoft. It does come with those bells and whistles. However, and what I'll touch on later, is it still has a couple of disadvantages from a SIEM perspective versus a SOC. But in terms of Sentinel, let's focus on that solution for now. So when we look at Sentinel, I know this slide says limitless cloud speed and scale. There's probably an argument to what limitless actually is. But when it comes to provisioning Sentinel, when it comes to ingesting, quite a number of different logs from Sentinel, there is huge flexibility. Again, it's on the cloud, it can scale. Microsoft has they have quite a number of data centers, and these data centers are not small, they are massive. So they can definitely accommodate those higher loads. We can also connect in a number of our Office 365 or M365 alerts for free. Notice that there's an asterisk on there. There's some things that are free, some things that aren't. Please do check Microsoft documentation, or better yet, contact Bytes, and we can tell you what is free and what's not. But if you are using a lot of M365, you have the capability to pump in a lot of those alerts into Sentinel, and it's not going to cost you. You're probably going to be charged for some of the underpinning storage and retention, but it allows you to get started quite easily. But when we look at Sentinel, it functions just like any other SIEM tool, right? The first objective to this is collecting data. Once we've collected that data, let's run a number of rules and analytical rules to actually start detecting any suspicious activity within our environment. Once we start detecting that suspicious activity, we can then start investigating. Now, investigating is, of course, the interesting one, because we've connected our SIEM tool to loads of different data sources. That means we can query all of those different data sources, which makes investigating a security incident a lot easier. And once we've actually got an understanding of what that security issue is, that's when we can look to actually respond to it. We know exactly what's going on. We know the extent of this threat and of this incident. Let's start putting containment measures in place and then move on to eradicating, that incident. So Azure Sentinel, it has the same framework as a number of different SIEM solutions out there. And again, this is, I suppose, just another slide that aligns to how things actually look in the Sentinel portal. Collection is always going to be the first part, then detection. Analytics is definitely going to be key. We can then investigate, and then we can then respond. So what does that actually look like? And if I just break out of this slide deck just very quickly, and bring up my Azure Sentinel page. So in fact, I'll probably zoom this in just a squeeze more, just so everyone can see. I don't want anyone squinting today, or that might be too much zoomed in. Let's go with 110% for now. So this is Sentinel. As soon as I log into Azure, I can search for Sentinel in the resources bar and bring this up. Now within Sentinel, we of course get a nice overview dashboard. We're going to completely ignore this for now, because the first stage that we always start off in is data connectors. So if I click on data connectors, we can actually see quite a long list of different data connections that we can establish. And in fact, we can filter these out by providers. I think for this one, I'll just filter out by Microsoft, so we can see what Microsoft services this can plug into. So we've got things like Azure Active Directory, we've got Azure Activity, Azure Defender, Azure Firewall, and a number of others. So there's a lot of out-of-the-box connectors that we can use here to actually start plugging in to those data sources. And as you saw in the list of providers, we can connect to a number of third parties, whether this be Barracuda, Checkpoint, Cisco, Darktrace, whichever. There are connections that we can establish. However, just to note, I know it only says that there's 116 connectors, and a lot of you are probably thinking, hang on a second, I've seen the security market. There is definitely more than 116 vendors and solutions out there. There's also more than 116 services out there. When we look at what we can install within our environment, this is probably 100 services on one server. Well, in one data center, maybe that might be a little bit of a inflation. These are just the out-of-the-box connectors. It's important to note that Azure Sentinel can also connect into and ingest things like syslog, Ceph, Leph, and a number of others by way of logs. You also have support for API. So if there are any third-party solutions that you have that allow API access, you can broker a connection between that solution and Sentinel can start pulling those logs in. So you're not limited by what you see on this list. These ones on the list are just, as I said, out of the box. They're very easy to configure. There's a preset amount of steps, and Sentinel pretty much does, a majority of the work for you. So enough about data connectors. We've connected some stuff up. As we can see on the left here, a number of these are ticked green. That means there's an active connection. We've got 9 connected on the Microsoft side, which is great. So once we've got this data coming in, what do we then do? And this is where we go to the analytics part, right? Now the analytics part is basically creating the rules of what we want to detect and the severity of that detection. So maybe I want to create different incidents based on what I'm seeing on my other cloud services, or maybe I want to run specific queries against logs that I'm taking from Active Directory, DNS, and DHCP, to further analyze and correlate that. There's quite a number of things that we can do on the analytical rules. There are, of course, rule templates that we can use. This is updated quite a bit from Microsoft, so we can actually take one of these and we can create the rule, we can customize the rule. It even gives us the rule query. So if we really wanted to go a little bit lower level, we can actually, append our own query to this. As mentioned, the flexibility here is quite good. We can create our rule from scratch and basically type in our own query if we wanted to. The main thing to understand from here is we want to build out a list of rules, a big list of rules, to actually go off onto our environments, onto all of those different data sources, and actually understand, right, where is that suspicious activity? And if it detects that suspicious activity, then mark it as high, medium, low, whichever. Now, of course, doing this, you're probably all thinking, well, hang on a second, you've got 43 active rules. Production environment would, of course, have probably hundreds of rules. That's going to be, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands alerts coming through. Of course it would be, but we don't want to be fatigued by any of those alerts. And this is really where incidents come into play. Incidents allows us to create rules on top of rules, I guess. So when one of those analytical rules are matched, we can say, right, you know what, let's correlate these alerts into a single incident, or let's just correlate that single alert into a single incident because it's severe. And you can probably see this here, that a lot of these incidents that have come through, it says, it's only got one alert, but there's one here that actually has 10 alerts. So we've actually put logic in place to say, okay, these 10 alerts correlate into each other. So instead of making 10 different incidents, let's just make a single incident. Now, incidents is really where the investigation takes place. So for this one, it actually says that this is a multi-staged incident. Multiple things have happened within that timeline. So we can click in to view the full details of this. And from the looks of it, there's quite a couple of high severity alerts. There's a lot of logins from a risky IP addresses. There's even some activity from a Tor IP address. This is getting more and more suspicious. Activity from infrequent country. I'm guessing, a lot of us have actually probably seen this on our environments. But at this point, the most worrying thing is this is an actual logon. It's not just an activity anymore. It's not someone failing to authenticate against an account from a suspicious IP. There is an actual logon, an authentication to a risky IP. So right now I'm getting maybe a little bit concerned. So I can actually jump in and investigate this. And this gives me a nice view into how these alerts and entities are, of course, correlated. Now, looking at this, I'm thinking, well, where do I start? And this is where the timeline really comes in, is I can actually see, right, almost minute by minute what happened. Well, the first activity started from an infrequent country. This then triggered an impossible travel activity, but then there was an actual login from a risky IP address. So we can see, just based on this timeline, how it's actually started to pull a lot of this together. And if I actually click on log on from risky IP address and then click on information, we can actually see that this is originated from Cloud App Security, and we can start to see more information based on why that alert was created. Now, of course, a lot of the information here was pulled from Cloud App Security, but it allows us to start seeing, well, what were those chain of events that has led to this attack? What we can also start doing from the information side is where it says log on from risky IP address. Of course, it seems to be the same user account, Ligu, at this moment in time. So what we can actually do from here, if we have them set up, of course, which I don't, I actually have the missing permissions. But what we can actually do from here is we can start running playbooks. So playbooks introduce that element of automation. So we could run a playbook that says, go into Azure Active Directory or Active Directory and disable that user account. We can even start writing different rules to say, once this alert has triggered, trigger this playbook straight away. Don't wait for someone to kick it off like here. This is going to be more of a manual kickoff. Don't wait for some kind of user intervention. Just go out and block that user. At this point, we're then starting the containment activities, right? Which is really key. Hopefully that gives an idea on the incident side. The next side to, of course, I suppose, finish off on, which I've already touched on, is the automation side. We can run and create a number of different playbooks to action things like that. So I can do an automation rule, and if I go into add actions, I can say, right, I want to run a playbook, and then I want to change the status to this to be investigated, and then I can change the severity to maybe a medium because there's been some containment that has already started, and maybe I want to assign it to an owner because right now it's not in triage, it's now going to the digital forensics or the investigators or whomever is on your SOC team capable of taking this a layer deeper. So hopefully that gives a view into the Sentinel piece. I suppose to summarize, it always starts with the data connectors. Just because there's not a data connector listed there does not mean it's not supported. There is support for, LEF, Ceph, syslog, although syslog converts it into Ceph, and API. So if there's a solution not on the list, there's of course ways to ingest that data. Second to that, analytical rules, very useful, very helpful. The more rules you have, the more detections there are going to be, yes, but make sure you put the correct alert logic in to formulate these into the correct incidents. And once you have an incident, that's when you can start investigating. Before that investigation takes place, you can add an element of automation in to start that containment activity. I suppose the only one that I didn't touch on was the hunting side. So hunting is a bit more proactive rather than reactive in the sense of we've got all of this information. We've plugged in our SIEM tool to our on-prem, to our Mimecast, to our CrowdStrikes, to our M365, Azure, AWS. We've got all of these data sources. Maybe I want to run some specific queries against that environment to actually start hunting for threats. Maybe I've seen a new CVE come through and I want to query that data to see if that CVE is applicable to anything. This is where we can start doing that. We can actually start running hunting queries against the environment to be a little bit more proactive. I'm only going to touch on it from there. I'm not going to go into any level of detail. The main thing to understand, there is that capability to be proactive and to go out and hunt. So hopefully that gives a bit more of an insight on the Sentinel piece, and I'll just come back into my slides. So as mentioned, always starts off on the data collection side, then we can start doing stuff with that information. Now, of course, looking at this, that was just a very quick run through. Connecting data sources, very easy. Turning on the out-of-the-box analytical rules, quite easy. Writing your own custom rules, that's when it starts getting a little more trickier, and actually putting the logic in and formulating it into the correct incidents can also be quite tricky. It can be quite time consuming, and I suppose this leads us to why Bytes have created a managed Sentinel service, is because whilst whilst Azure Sentinel is a cloud-based, Microsoft Microsoft-backed SIEM tool, it still suffers from some of the same downsides that a SIEM tool does. One of the main things, I suppose, is it's going to be SIEM tools are going to be admin heavy. Right, as mentioned, it's quite easy to start collecting all of that data. It's quite easy to turn on all of the out of the box stuff. And yes, it will generate alerts. Yes, it will generate incidents. But then, what if my environment is a little bit more complex? What if I need to write custom queries to that? I would need someone experienced to, of course, do that. What if an incident does occur? What do I do next? How do I investigate that? How do I start running custom KQL queries to pull out the information that I desire? SIEM tools, and the reason why only 17% of our responders on the survey only have a SIEM tool, I would guess, is because SIEM tools are admin heavy. Right, we need a group of analysts in front of this. We need people to water and feed the system, to keep it up to date, to load in the correct threat intelligence, and to cross-analyze CVEs that are being released in order to get that kind of value. So SIEM tools, very admin heavy. Another thing with SIEM tools in terms of getting the response capability is we need constant eyes on the service, right? Security threats and alerts, they don't just come in at business hours. In fact, it seems like quite a number of them actually happen on weekends and out of hours. That could be because of a time difference of certain countries launching attacks. It could just be a tactical play by the attackers, right? But just simply having someone 9 to 5 in front of or monitoring a SIEM tool, whether that be Sentinel or not, is not going to give us the desired response capability. Don't get me wrong, we can introduce an element of automation. We can kick off playbooks to restrict user accounts, block certain ports and connections on firewalls. That's absolutely fine. But in terms of actually investigating that further and making sure that that incident hasn't spread or done anything malicious on our environment, we kind of want someone, constantly there. So it's always a big thing. So whilst a SIEM tool does increase your response capability, yes, by bringing everything together and surfacing the correct data, it's a great start. But we've also got to consider who's going to do the investigation, who's going to respond to that, and who's going to do the containment and eradication and recovery. SIEM tools are only arguably like the first 1 or 2 parts of an incident response process, right? You can use you obviously be prepared on the SIEM tool by writing all the correct rules. You can do the investigation part and maybe a little bit of containment via the playbooks, but yeah, you still got to consider eradication and recovery, and that takes someone with a good amount of skill and knowledge of an environment. And again, this kind of links back to why Bytes have created a managed service for Sentinel, is because this delivers to our customers 24/7 detection of threats, but also threat containment. So it works with you and with your teams to ensure that any of these incidents that come through, they don't spread anymore. Right? This could be from closing down an account to closing down a network connection to, I don't know, waking up the whole team in the middle of the night to say that there's something wrong. They need to jump on your environment and they need to do something about it. So that 24/7 eyes on the service is absolutely crucial. Second to that is as we mentioned, we need people and process in place to actively investigate those types of incidents. Those people need to, of course, be trained up. They need to know what they're looking for. They need to have that experience. And we also need different feeds by threat intelligence. So both open sourced and closed sourced intelligence feeds into that. That's again what the managed service provides. It provides that people. It provides the process. It also provides more information that's going to make the SIEM tool more effective in analyzing and detecting threats. And what does that leave us with? Well, we can, of course, respond rapidly to critical incidents, and we can also analyze incidents and correlations over time based on that, and that also takes into account the threat intelligence piece. So hopefully that gives an idea as to the intention and the why behind the Bytes managed Sentinel. And I suppose looking over a little bit wider on the Azure Sentinel capability side, the managed service isn't the only thing that we do in regards to Azure Sentinel, right? If I start on the far right, the procurement services part, we can help with the licensing guidance. I know the costing of Sentinel can be a little bit confusing because it basically takes 3 different things into account, which I'm not going to go through today. This is not a licensing conversation, I do promise you. But, scoping out and understanding the licensing behind Sentinel, we can absolutely help with. We can, give sizing recommendations and scoping. We can demo Sentinel and we can provide pre-sale support on the procurement side. Once we have procured Sentinel, of course, we do have professional services here at Bytes to actually do the planning and architecture of Sentinel, what this looks like with all the different Azure resources, as well as all of the different data connections that need to happen. So because of this, we can deliver POCs, POVs, we can do deployment, installation, health checks is now, something that we're getting a lot more requests for. Seems like a lot of people have set up Sentinel, but they don't necessarily know if it's set up to best practice. So we've seen a spike in activity around there. We've then got our managed service, as mentioned, we've delivered it, cool. What about the next step? What about actually understanding, okay, how do I now, how do I get 24/7 eyes on and respond to an incident, say, out of hours? So we can then provide that managed security. And the final one is our cyber consulting division, which for full-blown incident response capabilities, they're the go-to. Right, these are the chaps that are going to do the digital forensics and incident management. So whilst the managed service and Sentinel itself will, of course, respond to incidents and contain them to the best of the ability, that eradication and recovery part, tends to be a lot more tricky. Our cyber consulting division can, of course, do the forensic investigations. They can help you eradicate and recover within those incidents. So all of this ties in to that capability that Bytes can offer on the Azure Sentinel side, and it really puts us in a very good position. So I wanted to, of course, bring something to the table to get everyone started. We have been working on a new workshop at Bytes called the Sentinel Activation Workshop, and for whatever reason, there was no text on that. That's strange. The text just disappears. Hold on, there's probably something wrong with the animation. Slight technical difficulty here. Or in fact, I think everyone can probably see this slide. Apologies if you can't. Technical difficulties with PowerPoint. In fact, hold on, I can probably resolve this now if I just delete this and then present again. There we go, all sorted. So we have actually been working on a new workshop, the Sentinel Activation Workshop, which is a session that helps you get up and running with Sentinel. What it does is it allows us to connect into let me rephrase. It allows one of our engineers to help you get up and running with Sentinel by helping you connect Sentinel into your cloud services. As we saw, there's loads of data connectors for Microsoft cloud services, right? So Azure M365, Azure AD, Cloud App Security, Defender for Endpoints. We will actually walk you through the best way to of course, set that up and get started in Sentinel. I'm going to make a couple of comments on this now, just so no one gets the wrong idea. This will not connect your on-prem services, and this will not connect your third-party services. The key reason being is there's a lot more config that goes around that, but also that's where the cost of Sentinel starts to come in. We want to almost POC it in a way with your Microsoft cloud services. Now, this Sentinel Activation Workshop, it is free of charge for Bytes customers. If you're, of course, not a Bytes customer, we can sort that out and then get you onto that workshop. I know I'm a bit shameless probably saying that, but there's of course ways to work around that. But the main thing is this helps you get up and running with Sentinel as quick as possible. The engagement itself, we break into 4 steps. We basically do a bit of an introduction of Sentinel, very much similar to what you've seen today. We then walk you through the onboarding of your of creating a Sentinel instance, as well as connecting it up into the correct data connectors. We then do a run through of Sentinel with your own information, and by run through I mean, let's look at the analytical rules. Let's look at some of the incident logic. Let's look at some of the workbooks. Let's look at places that you can find the playbooks. You know, we go through some of the areas that help you get set up and get up and running with Sentinel as quick as possible. I think there might be a poll that should be appearing on screen to see if there is any interest in this workshop. I'm assuming there we go. Awesome. Someone did hear that. So I've put a quick poll up just to see if you would be interested in this, or if you want more information, or if it's you know, not your cup of tea. If it's not your cup of tea, 100% understand. If a Sentinel conversation comes up in the future, or if you look to investigate Sentinel a little bit more, please do reach out to us. This is only one thing that we do around Sentinel, right? This is our free of charge pre-sales activity. There is a lot that we do around implementation, you know, health checks, architecture, managed services, and even digital forensic services, right? So this isn't the only thing that we do. This is the part to get everyone started. And I'm hoping, you know, by going through the session today of looking what Sentinel can do and can offer, everyone's aching to get started. And from the looks of it, you know, quite a number of you want a lot more information, which is great. So I'm going to close the poll off for now, because I think that's everyone that's answered that. So thank you so much for of course answering there. Again, we have a number of different workshops and sessions. Please do reach out to, you know, your account manager, or tell me more at bytes.co.uk, where we can of course look to help. And I suppose that leads us on to the Q&A session. So I'm just going to check the chat real quick to see if there's any questions. Now's the time to drop in any questions into the window, and I'm going to slightly have a quick drink of my coffee because I've been talking for a straight 40 minutes. No questions come through so far. I'm going to give it another minute just in case someone's frantically typing away. Hopefully the question won't be too complex. So yeah, we'll just give it another minute and enjoy my now room temperature coffee. Well, I think everyone is either shy, or I've done such a good job on this session that no one has any questions because I've covered everything off. In either case, we can move on from the QA and start closing down this session. So just want to say a big thank you for everyone attending today. Hopefully you found this session useful. A couple of takeaway points, of course. You know, Sentinel is a great tool. It can allow you to connect into a multitude of different data sources and, you know, run a lot of different analytics against your information. Be aware, though, that this is not going to give you the desired instant response capability that you probably want or think. It's always worthwhile considering who's going to actually manage and administrate that tool. And, you know, if that response capability needs to be a lot higher, managed services seem to be considered quite a bit more now. In terms of helping you get ready, you know, Bytes have a number of different capabilities in Azure Sentinel. Please do reach out to us for any more information. If you just want a chance to kick some ideas around and have a discussion of, well, what else can Sentinel do? Why should I be considering it? Please, again, do reach out. We're more than happy to have those conversations. It doesn't have to be a formal, you know, session or workshop or anything like that. But, you know, we're always here to support, assist, understand, and recommend. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and I'm sure we'll cross paths again. Thank you.